Today, I want to tell you the essentials that you should have as a first-time motorcycle rider. And these are things that I've taken from my personal experience over the past 4 years of taking motorcycling, seriously, things that I've learned from friends, things that I've learned from practice sessions that I've done, and from people right here on YouTube. Not only will I cover what you should consider in a first motorcycle, but the gear and some other things that maybe you'll want to keep in mind before you even buy that first bike. Now, if this video helps you, consider subscribing and hit your notifications. Let's go and get started. Let's talk about the things you should do in preparation before you get your first bike. A big one is going to be some kind of class, whether that's the MSF, the Harley-Davidson rider course, whatever it is, some kind of beginner class so you can really get your bearings. And the Harley-Davidson class is good because they provide the motorcycles for you, right? And you can get around people that have been doing this for a long time, and it's going to give you some confidence and some of the basic skills that you need. Riding a motorcycle is nothing like riding in a car or a truck, right? And most people get into them, turn the wheel, look over their shoulder, whatever, and just go on. Where motorcycling actually does take time and practice to become really good at it. And the better that you are at it, the safer you're going to be on the road and the longer you will be able to ride in your lifetime. So that's a good way to think about it. It's like starting off your journey in the right direction, right? Don't do what I did where it's just, and I'm not saying that learning from friends and stuff is a bad thing, especially if you have friends that are super skilled and are willing to show you the importance of those skills. But if you only have people around you that are like, yeah, man, just, let out the clutch, hit the throttle, and just go fast, that's probably not the best advice you want to take right off the rip. And while there are things that you can learn in the saddle on your own, a lot of these things have to be taught. And so first recommendation before you do anything, man, try to get into a class, get some seat time, but get that seat time around people that actually know what they're doing. They can call those things out and help you so you get started the right way super quickly. Now, there's guys right here on YouTube that do a fantastic job. They have their own classes, so it doesn't have to be Harley-Davidson. It doesn't have to be the MSF. Just anybody that is willing to take time with you and show you the right way to do things. Next thing I want to talk about is the gear. And so this is really a huge part of riding a motorcycle, okay? And there's a lot of gear that's involved and some things that you will for sure add to your arsenal, if you will, to extend your riding seasons or to, help you out when it's 110 degrees outside in the summer. Heated gear, all of this kind of stuff. So the basics though, helmet for sure. Needs to be DOT or Snell rated. And I understand that helmets are expensive, but you really want to go with a reputable brand. Your Shoeis or, your Roroks and, those higher end helmets are going to protect your noggin. Okay. And so, yeah, it's better to have a helmet than not have anything at all. But at the same time, I guess you could look at it like, hey, what is your head worth? Because that is the most vital part of your body that you want to protect. If you don't believe me, you can always look up some videos of motorcycle accidents and do that at your own risk, right? But I'm just saying that it may be beneficial for you to do that so you get an idea, okay, gear is something I have to do in order to keep myself safe because things will happen, right? And you can mitigate a lot of those risks by being defensive, seeing things before they happen, learning those skills I was talking about. But at the end of the day, you can't stop everything. So if you end up hitting the pavement, you want to make sure you at least have that helmet, a jacket, especially for cold weather riding. You will see people riding with flip-flops and shorts, right? Now, there is a video that I don't know if I can find it again, but this guy basically made an animation of what would happen to your foot if you were to get it caught on the road, right? You're on a bike, your feet are on the pegs. If it were to get caught with just your toes, it is brutal looking, right? you could probably find it right here on YouTube. And I'm sure maybe he's made more of what happens to your body when it impacts asphalt without any protection. And again, that may give you a different perspective and may motivate you to buy some good gear. Now, during the summer, there's one piece of clothing that I never wear, and that's a jacket because it gets so freaking hot. I've tried various jackets, actually one that I just tried this past summer that did not do enough for me. So I understand that, there's some articles of clothing that you just, take the risk whenever you get on a bike, right? It's all risky when you get on a motorcycle, but how much risk are you willing to accept, I think is a question that you'll have to answer.
It feels like I have a jacket on, that's all.
Yeah, in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
And so at a minimum for me, gloves, helmet, boots, jeans. And you can always spend a little bit more and get like, Teflon or abrasive resistant, jeans and shirts, boots, and all of that kind of stuff as well. Another thing you're definitely going to want to have is rain gear. Now you may say, I don't ever plan on riding in the rain, especially when I first start, and I understand that, but at some point you're going to get caught in the rain. And so having some kind of rain gear, by the way, rolling it, not folding it, will actually allow you to have more room. And just keep it in your bags or your backpack or whatever, however you're carrying your extra stuff. But having some type of rain gear is crucial, man. Another thing you want to consider is some type of anti-fog pin lock for your helmet. That will keep that from fogging or keep that fogging to a minimal. I've never found anything that stops the fogging all the time. But one thing I have is I actually have a wire for the inside of my helmet. So it's always partially open. So just by doing that, I'm able to keep most of the fog out. But when it's really cold outside or after a hard rain and then the sun comes out and things start to fog and haze and all that kind of stuff, definitely some kind of anti-fogging in your helmet is something you're going to want to have. Another thing is some type of way to mount your cell phone. I use Quad Lock because it's so simple. And so since I've done my bar replacement, I actually have to get a different attachment so I can, put my Quad Lock back on my bike. But having a way to attach your phone is simple, man, because you can just rotate it, boom, it's on there. And from there, you can control your music or, take phone calls or whatever you want to do. But that way your phone, your maps, everything is right there on your handlebars in front of you. Another thing too that is a good idea, right? If you get a flat tire or your tire pressure is low, getting some type of way to actually fill your tires with air. So I got this little portable air compressor. You charge it up and, that thing's been running now for months with no issue. And I filled up, the car tires in my wife's car. I filled them up in my motorcycle. So that's a really good way to keep your tire pressure as good as possible. You want to make sure your tire pressure is always perfect or close to perfect on your bike. You only got 2 tires, so you want to make sure you take care of those, and having some type of toolkit and a repair kit for a tire in case you get a nail in it. All right, getting a nail in a car tire is inconvenient. Getting one in a bike and a flat tire on that can be life-threatening. So taking care of your tires is essential. And the last thing I'll talk about is the bike itself, right? The exciting part. And so you may think up to this point, man, there's so much to think about. And there are, things in order to do to be more prepared. And that's the whole idea of this video, is just to get you prepared and get you off in the right direction. And just show you some of the things that I've had to learn the hard way. But there are certain bikes that I've done reviews on over the past few years that have been really great. The Rebel 500. The Shadow 750, the Indian Scout 60 is another good one. And there are people that will say you need to get the smallest possible motorcycle. There's others that say, hey, just buy the bike you want and learn on that. I find it good to start somewhere in between. When I started back up in 2017, I started on an Iron 883. And I found myself after 4 or 5 months wanting more power, not being super happy with the bike. And in 2019, I went from the Iron to the Street Glide Special. But in that whole time, I never really mastered the Iron 883. And so whatever bike you decide to go with, make sure you master that motorcycle before you move on to anything else. Make sure you can do your U-turns as tight as you possibly can. And that way when you go to the next bike, you know, hey, it's just more weight, but the concepts are still the same. But I would find somewhere in between. So I would never recommend like a Road Glide Special. Or, you know, let's say a Gullwing or Gixxer 1000 or CBR 1000. You know, it would always be somewhere maybe around a 500. You know, in the cruiser lineup, you could get a little bit bigger, and because they're geared differently and more weight and all that kind of stuff, it's not going to be as serious as getting something like a CBR 600, which is I would say, an advanced, at least intermediate bike, but definitely not a beginner motorcycle. So it depends on the type of bike, but I would always try to split the difference between, you know, the higher end motorcycles and the lowest CC you can possibly get. And that way it's something good to grow into as well. Now I mainly deal with cruisers, so that's why I mentioned those, you know, your Rebel 500s, your Shadow 750, and your Indian Scout 60, because they still give you enough power to grow into, but it's not so much power that it's going to be super unforgiving if you make a mistake. And so that's another thing you want to consider. Do you really want a $25,000 or $30,000 motorcycle knowing you're going to drop it? You will absolutely drop that motorcycle, almost guaranteed. Now you can get crash protection and stuff to help save the paint and tank and all that kind of stuff on your bike. And if that's something that you want to do, I would never stop anybody from doing that, but I would never recommend a bike like that to start on. And so choosing a happy medium there, a bike that's forgiving but gives you enough power to grow into, is my recommendation. Also, a bike with a low seat height. Now, most of your beginner bikes are going to have a low seat height, but this is just going to give you more confidence when you come to a stop and when you back the bike up. Also, less weight. So knowing that, hey, if and when I drop this thing, I'll be able to easily pick it back up. Now, there are tricks to learn whenever you get into a heavyweight motorcycle that you can use to lift that motorcycle up. But having a lighter weight motorcycle is going to do two things. It's going to make it easier to learn your maneuvers. You're not going to feel like the bike wants to fall over as quickly when you're going under 5 miles an hour. And plus, you know, again, you can pick it up, you know, when you do eventually drop it. Now, sometimes this will create a less stable motorcycle at higher speeds. That's just kind of the give and take though. Also, you want to pick something with good lighting. Or if you pick a motorcycle that doesn't have great lighting, upgrading to LEDs is one of the first things I almost always recommend. You're a smaller profile, you have less lights, and so the brighter the light you can, and the more lights you can put on there, without going over the top, of course, is something that is super vital to you being seen on the road. Upgrading your pipes is another one, right? And this one I see as less helpful in having people hear you as opposed to the lighting. I think if people can see you, that's generally going to be better because people are listening to their radio super loud and on the phone or whatever. And so the chances of them hearing you may not be as good, but still having a way to audibly tell somebody, hey, I'm in your blind spot or I'm coming up on your blind spot is another life-saving thing. And plus, it sounds good. And so that's what we all are looking for. It's a dual purpose upgrade for sure. Also, when you go to choose a motorcycle, if you have a dealer that won't let you sit on the bikes, at least sit on the bikes. And or if you can test drive them, I'd stay away from them because you need to be able to sit on it and spend some time with this. You know, don't just sit on it for a minute or two and say, oh yeah, this is comfortable. Imagine yourself sitting in that position for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours at a time. Then see if it's comfortable. If you got a little bit of bend or arch in your back and you know, hey man, I got back issues, that is not going to work for me, then you can look up either an alternative motorcycle or some things that you can do to fix that. Handlebars, maybe forward pegs instead of mids, relocation kits. There's all kinds of little things you can do. So just understand, like if you really like this bike, but something just isn't right to you, you always have the option to choose something else, or those things can always be changed down the line. And so that's some of the basic things and essentials that you need as a new rider. And so I hope these things will help you out. If they did, again, consider subscribing, or you can join the channel right here. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.